Good morning, and if I don't see you again, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Today, we are talking about the one and only Berlin Wall.
Now, for you little kids, it was not made out of Lego. It was a 6 foot high, 87-mile long, made out of concrete.
So, Sam and I are going to hit you with the context of the Berlin Wall. As World War II came to an end in 1945, a pair of Allied conferences at Yalta and Potsdam determined the fate of Germany's territories.
They split the defeated nation into 4 Allied zones. The eastern part went to the Soviets,
while the western part of the country went to USA, UK and France, known as...
Western Berlin.
No,
West
Trizona.
Trizona.
Jeez, Sam.
Even though Berlin was located within the Soviet part of the country, the Yalta and Potsdam agreement split the city into 2.
The Soviets took the eastern half while the western half went to the Allies.
This 4-way occupation began in June 1945.
The existence of West Berlin, a conspicuously capitalist city deep within the communist East Germany, stuck like what?
A bone in the Soviet throat. The Russians began maneuverings to drive the USA, Britain and France out of the city for good.
Your head's literally like an egg.
Yeah, I've seen. This effort.
This effort is known as the Berlin Airlift, lasted more than a year and delivered more than 2.3 million tons of food, fuel and other goods to West Berlin.
So the Soviets called off the blockade in 1949.
In 1958, embarrassed by the seemingly endless flow of refugees from east to west, nearly 3 million since the end of the blockade, many of them young skilled workers such as doctors, teachers and engineers, commonly known as the brain drain.
Summits, conferences and other negotiations came and went without resolution. The U-2 spy plane crisis led to the tension between Khrushchev and the new American President Kennedy.
Meanwhile, the floods of refugees continued.
In June 1961, some 19,000 people left East Germany through Berlin.
The following month, 30,000 fled.
In the first 11 days of August, 16,000 East Germans crossed the border into West Berlin.
And on August the 12th, some 2,400 followed.
The largest number of defectors ever to leave East Germany in a single... Now moving on to the nitty-gritty.
The problem.
Yes, on November the 10th, 1958, Khrushchev demanded that the United States and its allies relinquish their occupation roles in Berlin. He also declared that if they did not sign an agreement to this effect within 6 months, the Soviet Union would no longer honour their post-war agreement, and this would enter the separate treaty with East Germany.
Eisenhower refused Khrushchev's demands, insisting that their Berlin Agreement still held. On November the 27th, the Soviet Union announced that it had rejected the post-war agreements concerning the occupation and the governance of Germany and West Berlin. Khrushchev also proposed that Berlin become a free city. Although Khrushchev did not indicate that the Soviet Union would use military force if the United States did not comply, it was widely understood that the Soviet Union intended to back up its threat.
Eisenhower refused to agree to the Soviet demands, arguing that a free Berlin with no guaranteed access to the West would soon be controlled by the communist East Germany. Multiple attempts to find a diplomatic solution was unsuccessful. In September 1959, the US-Soviet talks took place at Camp David.
Shortly after, before the summit in Paris 1961, a U-2 plane was shot down over the USSR, where the pilot Gary Powers was captured and made to confess that he was sent to spy on the Soviet Union. This greatly damaged US-Soviet relations, and the Paris summit collapsed in 1960 over the U-2 affair, as Khrushchev demanded an apology, with Eisenhower refusing to give one.
Then, in 1961, Kennedy, the youngest president, was elected. Khrushchev saw this as an opportunity to exploit the fact that Kennedy was new and young for the job. Khrushchev reintroduced his 1958 ultimatum at the Vienna summit. However, Kennedy was determined to not back down to Khrushchev, mainly to prove a point that he was capable as the president.
Vienna marked one of the lowest points in the US-Soviet relationship. Khrushchev attacked Kennedy over Berlin. He banged his fist on the table and shouted,
"I want peace, but if you want war, that's your problem."
Kennedy responded with,
"If that's true, it's going to be a cold, cold winter."
"Oh." Straight after the meeting, Kennedy increased US military spending by $3.25 billion.
With so much tension and fear over Berlin, thousands of people were defecting to South Germany, West Berlin.
Nice one. This was known as a brain drain. So Sam, obviously you would have stayed in East Berlin then.
Banter.
The wall itself.
Yes, at 2 o'clock in the morning of 1961, East German soldiers built a barbed wire barrier along the frontier between East and West Berlin, ending all free movement between the two cities. This barrier was quickly renovated into a concrete wall. There was only one crossing point, known as Checkpoint Charlie.
And on the 27th of October 1961, a Soviet tank denied any access to East Berlin. Dum 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 dum. All day, US and Soviet tanks, fully armed, faced each other in a tense standoff known as
The October Crisis.
However, the tanks both retreated.
Kennedy said that it was not a very nice solution, but the wall is a hell of a lot better than the wall.
Over the next 3 decades, 136 people killed trying to cross the border. Then, on 1989, the border was
reopened!
So geht sie zu Bruch und nichts anderes. Und nicht das Loch.
The significance of the Berlin Wall. The American benefited from the wall as it was great propaganda to use, showing that the people were defecting from communism. Furthermore, it secured West Berlin as the territory beyond the Iron Curtain.
The USSR gained from the wall as it stopped people defecting from them. On the other hand, the US suffered from the wall as it showed that the US was not able to comply with all their doctrines about protecting states from communism.
The USSR suffered as this was a big indicator that communism was unpopular, and the only way they could stop people from defecting was an actual wall.
Boom!